Mental illness is up dramatically since the epidemic hit America. Consider this from the Holy Scripture.
Prepare your minds for action, and being sober-minded, set your hope full on the grace that will be brought to you. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13.
Are you sober-minded? Do you think there's no hope? There is, and it's waiting for you at your local church. There you'll find a healthy mindset that will give you strength and wisdom. The welcoming committee is there waiting for you. See you soon.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornosky. So glad to be with you all live again for another broadcast of news, commentary, and analysis from a perspective outside left versus right. This is a program for those who are sick and tired of politics, but they want to do something, want to be a part of something bigger than just numbing out. And I think that represents the vast majority of people in this country, which is why we put this program together for folks just like you every day. Right? Because we know that there's a lot of people out there who say, you know what? I don't buy what's coming out of DC. I don't give I don't give a care what they say. The bureaucrats and the television media, they have been discredited themselves. But at the same time, they don't want to go the other extreme and just say, hey, well, let's just numb out and eat junk food and gobbledygook, and let's numb out with mindless entertainment and drama and waste our lives away like nihilists. We don't want to do that either. I think that represents the vast majority of people. People know that there's something fundamentally wrong with DC. They know there's something fundamentally wrong with the media. They're just too transparently fake. They're too transparently agenda-driven. I mean, we point this out every day on this broadcast with the ABC News reporting. They talk about what you need to be scared of today. You know, they do this little thing, and we're supposed to sit back and act like, oh, there's nothing weird about that. It's totally normal to just constantly inundate people with traumatic messaging that's meant to make people feel powerless and apathetic and fearful and docile and just desperate for, somebody to lead them along like a bunch of sheep. We don't want that. Okay? That's not how you solve problems. That's not how people solve diseases in life. That's not how they solved, pandemics and plagues in the past. That's not how they solved scarcity issues. That's not how they improved technology. It doesn't come from being fearful, scared, and going along with TV experts. Right? And that's what we have to deal with. That's what we have to deal with. And one of the things that I think is exciting is the things that we can do together to build community that is strong, that is vibrant, and that is going to last in a sustainable way. Yesterday I'm going to get into some news, but I just want to give some initial thoughts here about where I'm coming from. I was talking to a friend yesterday who said, I just don't want to get involved, David, like you. I don't want to get involved with, fighting against the big, crumbling narratives of the establishment. He said the crowd doesn't have any logic, doesn't have any rhyme or reason. When the crowd turns its sights against you, there's nothing you can do to escape it. And that's true, and that's a real concern for people. And it makes sense that most people want to walk away from what matters. But we have to do something. And people think, well, talking about it, is that really enough? And it's not enough in one sense. You do have to put action to it beyond just speaking. But don't ever underestimate the power of the spoken word in being able to light a fire in the hearts of people, to turn from their wicked ways, to reduce their reliance on old groupthink ideologies, and rekindle their love of liberty and their love of ethics and empathy for their neighbor. Don't ever discount that. But a lot of people are scared. They say, I agree with you, David, but I want to make money and be safe. I think America or whatever, this is a different time. It's all declining. What can we do? Let's stick our heads in the sand and make some money. Well, that's an easy way out, isn't it? But eventually that doesn't do right by your neighbor, and it doesn't do right by yourself either, right? It doesn't take care of you. Because things are going to get tough whether we do nothing or whether we do something. And there's a risk that if we do something, meaning we fight for what we believe in, we fight for the love of our neighbors, we fight for nonviolence, we fight for beauty, peace, all the things that we talk about, there's a chance that we can get pushback. There's a chance that we can get, bad things. But there's also a chance, again, that those things will happen, and perhaps even worse, if we all do nothing. But if we do something, there's also a small chance, or maybe a big chance, that things can be better. And we don't believe in trying to get majority opinion on our side to enforce our way onto the rest of the people. What we have to focus on is taking care of our neighbors, neighbor to neighbor. And if we can help just one neighbor get out of mental prison or physical prison where they shouldn't be in physical prison, if we can help just one neighbor get liberated from the prison of poor nutrition that's been sold to them by a dubious media, pseudoscientific groupthink cartel, if we can help one person liberate their body from disease, if we can help one child live in an environment where they're not inundated with hateful scripts of self-loathing, then we've done our part. And I know that's hard for people to wrap their minds around because they feel like they have to get the vast majority of people to think like them for something to happen in a positive way, but that's not how it works. Our job is to put our skin in the game and to take care of our neighbor. The Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, he did not ask, what will happen to me if I go and help this man? He asked, what will happen to that man if I don't? And that should be the driving animation behind the things that we do today. And that leads me to another topic that another person told me, another friend said, well, what do we do about all these ideologies? We have nationalism, we have socialism, we have populism, we have libertarianism, all these things, conservatism, and they all get things wrong on fundamental levels here and there. But the thing is, we have to work with people where they're at. I really wish that I could be able to engage the mainstream corporate left more, folks who are in that world. I have a lot of, connection and ability to relate to folks on the progressive left, those who are anti-war, the people like Glenn Greenwald, Julian Assange, Matt Taibbi types, Naomi Wolf, people who are good civil liberties, good on civil liberties, good on suspicion of, corporatism, good on being against wars, those folks. But this new weird TV party, the folks that watch Jimmy Kimmel and stuff and really think that's hilarious, like those folks, I want to be able to reach them. I want to talk to them. I don't want to talk down to them. I don't want to talk at them. I want to talk with them, because I want them to understand that there's a lot of things we could do that could actually provide a lot better results than the things that they're doing now, thinking they're getting good results. They talk about justice. They want justice, right? The folks that watch Netflix specials and Jimmy Kimmel and think that's what reality is like. These folks thought that they voted for a man who was trained by segregationists like Joe Biden, and they thought they did justice for minority communities. And you say, how'd that happen? How'd you square that one? And of course, from their mind, they can give you, all kinds of mental pretzels that they can deliver to you to justify their crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, we all know, and they know, that what they did is not something that will promote justice. And I want to be able to have a conversation where we can bring people back to personhood, where we can bring people back to a place where they value people's personal freedoms, no matter who's in charge, no matter who wants to strip them away. But we've lost that for a large portion of this country, on left and right. And I wish, we need to have a conversation with folks on the right who are lost in a sea of collectivism that's mirroring, the left. I've seen before that some folks to say on the right, they'll say, we got to be more reactionary. And they say that as if they don't understand how much of a joke that sounds, They want to double down on reactionary ideology, as if that's somehow a solution to the other version of reactionary politics that is conservative Inc., mainstream conservative, ecosystem. And that's just a total non-starter. Because if you're reacting, you're not leading. If you get your cues from what somebody else is doing and you're always just reacting to whatever they've done, you're not in the driver's seat. You're a child in the back seat. And this idea that we can roll back, you hear it's popular on the right now. Oh, we can't have time to talk about personal liberty and individual liberty. We got to get tougher and be more aggressive and vicious like the left. What's that going to do? What's that going to do? That's not going to get anything done. That's going to make everybody nastier and meaner. We've got to find a way to reach the TV party, Hillary Clinton loving, mainstream, TV party mindset. And I don't know what the answers are. I have a few ideas I could throw out here today, but it's something I wanted to throw to you. How do we reach those folks? You've got people in the true progressive side. You got Tulsi Gabbard. You've got, people that like Slavoj Žižek, who's a, communist. There's a lot of folks in kind of the intellectual left that still have a little bit of, vitality in their thinking, and they're able to really, understand the nonsense coming out of the TV. But the corporatist, mainstream TV party left, God, we've got to find a way to break through to them so they can understand that they're doing things by shredding liberty and shredding respect for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. They're doing things that are going to have disastrous consequences, and do have disastrous consequences right now. And it's something that they need to be mindful of. So when we return, we're going to get into some news headlines together. We'll also have a special guest, a former Health and Human Services scientist would join us for an update on what's going on in the science of this pandemic and deal, and the whole, the new variant deal. But in the meantime, you can call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. Or write a comment on the YouTube stream. Back in a second. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. David Granosky, your host, is here live with you on FM, AM podcast video stream. And we're on Rumble, this Rumble streaming platform. It's a alternative to YouTube. YouTube's become a lot more dubious in their ethics than they used to be back when they wanted to have market control, and get it. They were still ascending. Now that they have got that power, they are ready to kind of lay down the gauntlet and abandon their principle of don't be evil, like Google used to say. Remember? That's thrown out the window now. And that's a sad thing because, there's a lot of people who, back when the internet was still a little bit more free, were able to learn and understand the world in a perspective that was beyond the, failed ideology of the kind of generic corporate vanilla media. And now that's kind of lost for a time, but I think a lot of people are still finding the truth, even though it's kind of more decentralized again, the way the internet was before Google and those platforms became really prominent. But at the same time that's happening, there's a tendency for people to believe, well, if something is super banned everywhere, therefore it should be the coolest thing to check out. And that's a problem, right? Because just because the corporate establishment press or social media platforms banish someone doesn't make them automatically the most edgiest, deepest truth. See, there's this kind of dialectical mistake that people make. Where it's like you got one side of the dialectic that says if it's not on TV, if it's not sponsored by all the giant pharmaceutical companies on my nightly newscast that's brought to you by all these big giant companies, then I don't believe it. And then you have other people who say if it's not banned on every place and banned off the face of the earth, then I don't believe it. You see how that dialectic works? And they reinforce each other, right? Now, that doesn't mean that anything that's banned off the face of the earth is therefore not to be trusted. That doesn't mean that either, right? And it doesn't mean that anything the TV says always is going to be wrong. See, that's what takes wisdom, right? Trying to sort all this stuff out. And that's a tiring thing for people when there's so much news inundating them and all this stuff. But that's what we have to do. That's the line we have to walk, is being able to chew the fish and spit out the bones in all these different contexts. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff that gets thrown out there. And of course, that's what the TV party feeds off of. You know, whenever they say, hey, you've got to listen to only us, you know. You've seen those clips maybe going around online of the Australian health officials saying, or who is it, Australia, I believe, saying, the only people you can trust are us. You know, we're the only sources. Or was that New Zealand? I don't know. There was a few of them that have been running around where they say, these health officials are saying, you know, we're the only source of information you should listen to. The only source. And you think, my goodness. And the way they do that is they say, you see what some crazy stuff people believe? You know, they did that with the press secretary with Biden. They said, you know, what is it? 20% of Americans believe there's microchips in the new vaccine. They say, see? So they a lot of them have been saying this, but they take the most extreme thing they can come up with or whatever, and they say, see, that's why you have to go to your TV. And it's like, well, no, that's not what we have to do. Okay. But those two sides, they feed off of each other. The vast majority of people in the middle of that, they don't agree with the craziest stuff that CNN finds on the internet to act as a foil against, but they don't agree with the crazy conspiracy theories that CNN promotes either. They just have common sense, but they're too busy trying to keep up with the rising costs of inflation and so forth, the rising costs of globalist trade deals, the rising costs of food and all these different things. They don't have time to sit down and parse it all out. And so they're desperate to find platforms that will just boldly follow the evidence as best as they can and not pretend to be a guru, not pretend to be an expert. And that's what I try to do on A Neighbor's Choice, is try to just do what we would expect our neighbors to do if they were trying to report on what's new in the world. That's what news is, right? What is new? That's the news. And that's a hard thing to sift through all the nonsense, but we must do it. We have to. There's no choice. If we don't, it'll just get worse by default. So we have to fight for the truth. And there's different ways to fight for the truth. Not everybody has to do media, right? That's not what we're saying here. But at the same time, you know, as someone who wants to imitate the role model of Jesus, Jesus had this idea that people who imitate him would be like prophets. And a prophet is someone who speaks truth to power. That's a kind of media that every one of us should be in some way. Maybe it's not through a digital technology like a podcast or a stream or whatever, but someone should really speak truth to power. And I see people who are raising concerns about side effects they've had from this new product that the government wants everybody to take or else. And you say, well, why can't they speak? Why do we have to treat them like, oh, you're taboo? You have real concerns. You have side effects. You want to express how you feel. Maybe you have a loved one who's had side effects. Maybe it wasn't caused by the product. Maybe it was. Why can't we allow people to speak? Who said that these giant corporations and giant governments get to dictate to us who is allowed to speak? I believe in letting people speak and let people decide for themselves what's the facts. And people are most often going to choose the comfort of the herd one way or another. But we still should be able to at least present people with options so they can see that it's not just crazy stuff on some obscure blog or crazy stuff on some obscure CNN show. We have to sort through that. That's the hard task before us, but we can do it together. I'm David Gornosky, back in a moment.
Tampa Bay. What's everyone saying about the all-new News Talk 1040 WHBO?
Talk radio is cool because everybody gets to give their opinion.
What I like about talk radio is that all of the broadcasters give their opinions, which helps educate me on the local news and current events.
That's what I like about talk radio, all the different opinions.
Current topics of the day.
Breaking news. They have probably the best news source.
Tampa Bay. The news and talk of Tampa Bay.
I just love that station.
News Talk 1040 WHBO.
COVID cases on the rise across the country. The CDC urging Americans to get those shots, saying most hospitalizations are affecting the unvaccinated. The American Academy of Pediatrics now recommending all children return to school wear masks, even if they are vaccinated. ABC's Trevor Ault says other states are banning schools from implementing mask mandates.
We've already seen at least one Arizona school district back in the classroom with masks optional, and at least 9 states are trying to outright block mask mandates from reaching the classroom. Now, at least for now, those decisions will be made by your local leaders. But regardless, across the country, COVID cases have climbed nearly 300% in the past month.
New York's Attorney General struck a $1 billion deal today with 3 distributors of opioids. The settlement is with Mickelson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen. Those distributors will now be dropped from the ongoing trial that accused them of contributing to the opioid crisis in New York. I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
A Neighbor's Choice returns live on radio, FM, AM. And we're broadcasting from Central Florida, which is the headquarters of our project here, as we try to build a conversation around the world guided by a love of our neighbor, loving our neighbors as ourselves. That's the choice before us. A lot of people think it's okay to love their neighbor by employing coercion left and right. That's a pathway to hell on earth that we'll see a lot more of if we don't learn from our wicked ways and stop doing it. You don't get to use coercion just because you're scared or you're petty or angry or you want to get back at somebody because they voted for the person you don't like. How dumb and pathetic, how immature and stupid that is. It's just painfully stupid. And it's something that we need to be able to have a frank conversation about it. And it's one of those things that it's not going to go away just because we don't want to have those direct conversations with each other in a kind way. That's the only way we're going to get past this dark period of ignorance that's continually spreading by the TV. Glenn Greenwald says, if you were to propose the speed limit be lowered to 40, almost nobody would support it, even though doing so would save thousands of lives. They would say we can't incur those costs. It's worth it to allow those deaths. Why is there no rational risk-benefit calculus to COVID? Mental health suffering, isolation, depression, addiction, and economic deprivation also kill. Those deaths aren't less tragic or painful than deaths from COVID. And Peter, a commenter, says, Glenn is an old school liberal in the best tradition, a rare breed. And it's not, and they're still doing lockdowns. They still want to do it. They still want to do it everywhere they can. And then there's, of course, that new pediatric group that's saying, the new statement from the Pediatric Association saying, oh, kids should go back to school with these terrible masks, even if they're vaccinated. It just doesn't make any sense. The nonsense just will continue. This was supposed to be 2 weeks to slow the spread. Now children are having their entire elementary careers masked for no reason. We don't know what the long-term consequences of creating such as, extreme environment for children for a disease that it has like almost hardly any consequences for little children. And we're not allowed to, let them have their freedom. We're not allowed to let them breathe fresh air and see their smiles. It's so important. These bureaucrats did not invent smiles. They don't know how important facial identity and recognition with one another is to the human experience. And they want to rob children of that for indefinitely. As people have pointed out, I believe influenza is more deadly than this new virus is for children, young children. And yet, so by that standard, they'll want to keep kids masked forever because the flu's still with us every year. Why can't we have an honest conversation about this? We used to have shows like Firing Line and stuff, where people would debate things, William F. Buckley and Gore Vidal, where they would debate with intelligence, and now you can't say anything to anybody else. You're just supposed to, just hate each other. This is what the media wants us to do, just hate each other all day long. Don't talk to each other. Don't say, hey, how does this, what's your standard? Okay, I understand you're scared. That's fine, but what's your standard to do this? To do this to kids indefinitely? Robbie Suave, I think is a writer at Reason. He says the tweet that resulted in Marjorie Taylor Greene's temporary ban, she's the congressperson, a Republican congresswoman. I guess she was temporarily banned off of Twitter. But the tweet that she was banned for, calling COVID, quote, not dangerous for non-obese people and those under 65, is not a particularly compelling example of misinformation. I don't think it is either. But again, because it's someone they don't like, they get to play Mean Girls middle school, lunchroom drama stuff. Oh, that person who's not cool says something that's mildly, that's a statement that is in the direction of truth. It's not a huge disease for people who are not obese and who are under the age of 65. But in this hyper insecure regime, that's intolerable. That's intolerable. They can't handle it. Usually when you're that insecure, it means you're losing the argument. If you're that insecure that you can't even allow mild facts to be presented, oh, I can't take it. Take her off the line. She can't say that. She's not saying, it's perfectly fine for people who are 95 to get this disease. She's not saying that. But because she's someone who's on the designated scapegoat team, and I don't even share her politics, but it's clear that she's a designated villain in the little TV party narrative. Therefore, if she says something like that, oh, we can ban her for that. It's just mean girl politics from the movie Mean Girls. That's all they're doing. You're not cool. You're not in the cool crowd, so you can't say anything. And so therefore the conversation, the discourse is falling apart. It's falling apart. And it's something that we can actively make it better, though. We don't have to be passive bystanders to this mess. Joff Schellenberger put a quote from Rene Girard, who I talk about on this program and on our podcast, Things Hidden. He says, among humans, this is Girard, no one ever feels they are the aggressor because everything is always reciprocal. The aggressor has always already been attacked. That's the truth. Everybody always thinks that they didn't start it. And therefore, we can ban people from speaking because they're aggressing against my life because they're pointing out that people under the 65 years old marker and people who are non-obese are not as at risk of this disease. That's like scientifically a fact. But because it's said by people that they're scared of and they hate, and the TV tells them it's okay to dehumanize, then, they feel aggressed upon, therefore they can strike back with bans and so forth and threats. You look at someone like Senator Rand Paul, and he just points out scientific facts, which we'll get to later in the broadcast. He had an exchange with Dr. Fauci that we'll get to. But he points out facts, and again, the little Twitter left and everything, they keep talking about violent aggression towards this man. And it's like, well, why are you able to be violent? Because in their, warped perspective, warped by hate, he's aggressed against them because he has challenged the person who transmitted the information that they feel to be from a sacred source. In this case, the National Institutes for Health and the powerful outsized influence they have over worldwide funding of scientific research in these fields. And so for him to challenge Fauci and bring up the facts about his involvement with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that is such an egregious blasphemy to the transcendence that they want to participate in, which is that I am a good person. I believe and I obey in the TV. I believe and I obey those who the TV tells me are science. I believe and obey and I sacrifice for them. You see, people have a religious need to do rituals to this day. They put on their mask. They put on 2 masks while they work outside or run in a far-off nature trail. And the extra difficulty in trying to run or jog with 2 masks on is a kind of propitiation for their indulgent sins. That's why the white liberals are so obsessed with things like white privilege, because they are extremely privileged. And they want to remind, so they scapegoat people who are poorer than them to say, hey, you are white supremacists, as a way of kind of offloading their own decadent privilege onto people who are less fortunate to them, but don't use the proper rhetoric and holiness speech codes. You see what I mean? Those in the white liberal elitist crowds, the Joe Scarborough types, the Hillary Clinton types, they have tremendous. Well, I don't know about Hillary Clinton. I don't know about her if she has a tremendous amount of guilt. I don't know, but because she's pretty ruthless, she's pretty tough. But a lot of the average people who watch these kind of programs and really buy into the BS for perpetual war, perpetual police state, perpetual hatred, and just vicious hate, the surveillance and nasty, hateful rhetoric. They have a tremendous amount of guilt for their excessive privilege and indulgent lifestyles. And they have a lot of, they feel like, they feel embarrassed about it. And so they don't want to admit that they are the problem, but they know that they can look at, poor white people who don't use the same holiness speech codes that they use. They don't say Latinx, so they can say, hey, well, you're bad white people. So they want to kick a dog. It's like scapegoating. They want to kick something that can't kick back. That's their perspective. So they look at those pitchfork peasants that they see Trump representing and say, I can kick that. Those people are beneath me. I can kick that person and I can get people to think I'm a good person because I'm kicking that because it's dirty. That's how they view. That's why they say things like, you'll see these people who are always talking about, the left's supposed to be concerned with the poor, but all they do is they'll talk about how, Trump supporters are inbred and they don't have teeth and they're dating their cousin. They use all kinds of disgusting, hateful, dehumanizing language. And that's their way of venting they have a lot of built up anger and aggression at themselves, but they have to offload it onto, a safe release valve that they think can't fight back. And that's why, that whole Capitol riot thing was such a traumatic thing, because they said, wait a second, here are these savages coming into, these are beneath us. These are beneath human respect. And who are they to come into this sacred temple, which has been creating violent coups and regime change, bloody chaos all over the globe, particularly in countries with people of color. And they don't even bat an eye at they're just lost in cognitive dissonance, right? And they think so they think, well, you're not using the speech codes that I deem holy. And whether that's in the field of science, like for example, I was thinking about this today. That this whole process that the left has assumed, and they're not a left. We're just calling these nicknames. It's not anything to do with left wing really anymore. But this leftist, so-called Democrat or whatever, groupthink about you must comply to the narrative. If you don't get this product, you are causing deaths in people. If Facebook doesn't delete everybody who yawns or coughs the wrong way against our narrative, we're going to get you. This is not left wing. That's right wing politics. Right wing politics is all about this idea classically of like purifying the camp from contamination, of keeping things pure. And that's why, you go back to ancient religions, they had pure foods and unclean foods. You had clean rituals and unclean rituals. You couldn't touch, dead bodies. You couldn't do certain things, right? There was a certain line of purity versus, uncleanliness. And this concept of disgust, I think Jonathan Haidt talks a little bit about this, and maybe some others, where there's this idea of disgust is a fundamentally conservative right-wing concept. And yet the left has really taken this concept with Fauci and this stuff, and they've really grabbed a hold of it with delight because they like to be to say, you're unclean. Unless you have gotten the approved king's medicine, you are unclean, right? Unless you eat the plant goop burger, if you eat red meat, you're unclean, right? If you don't buy an expensive $80,000 electric car, you're unclean to the planet. You're contaminating the planet, they say, right? If you don't vote for Biden, you're unclean in your, desire for racial justice. You're not doing racial justice, right? They have all these little cleanliness things. This is a right-wing posture. But I was thinking, how did the left get to this place? Well, they got to this place because they're trying unconsciously as a religion to outcompete Christianity in its love of science. That's the paradox here. Christianity is the life force of the Western tradition of scientific discovery and the scientific method and the scientific approach to understanding the world. And leftism is an attempt, as a zealous revolutionary desire to supplant what Christianity does to break the world free from pagan human sacrifice and bring us into a place of scientific facts and scientific discovery. But the left is trying to outcompete Christianity. It doesn't think that Christianity does it fast enough. It doesn't think Christianity does it strong enough. It thinks that Christianity's message about loving both the oppressor and the oppressed is a collusion with the oppressor. It's jealous of Christianity. It doesn't like Christianity's message of forgiveness and reconciliation and grace and mercy and forgiving 70 times 7. It doesn't like that part. It wants the concern for victims that Christianity has, but it wants it in a way that gives them power to determine who is good, who is bad, who is clean, who is unclean. And in that way of trying to outcompete Christianity in its scientific breakthroughs and its suspicion of kind of faith-driven religious superstition, because that's ultimately what Christianity did. It questioned the old ways of thinking about, well, here's a plague, it must be a witch that did it. And Christianity kind of broke us free from that. We'll learn about that more with my new interview with Monica Paulus, which will be online at aneighborschoice.com very soon. Someone who was accused of being a witch wrongfully in Papua New Guinea and faced many attempts at burning her alive. And many other people were trying to drown women and men accused of sorcery based on nothing but jealousy and crowd fervor. That's happening to this day in 2021 AD. But that's a society that I believe hasn't had the penetration of the gospel technology in a way that allows them to kind of break free from that mental prison strongly and conclusively. And so when it gets bits and pieces of modernity stepping into Papua New Guinea with technology and advantage and wealth, it can create strong feelings of jealousy, which can revive the old-time practice of witch burning as a means of coping with great changes taking place. And so when I look at the way the left is acting, it's a fundamentally right-wing thing to be trying to create this health and human services kind of nightmarish, Orwellian, dictator-type authoritarian approach to the world. It's a right-wing thing. That's what right-wing concepts usually of purity and uncleanliness are all about. But it got that way because it's so zealous to replace Christianity in being the par excellence house of science. But that's going to fail because science isn't done through coercion. I'm David Gornosky. We'll take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice. You can call in at 727-587-1040, 727-587-1040, or if you feel more comfortable, write a comment on our live stream. Back in a moment.
Hello, this is David Gornosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved two people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm David Gornosky here. Hello at aneighborschoice.com is our email. If you want to send us an email, a feedback, question, that's hello at aneighborschoice.com. So, one of the things that comes to mind when I think about the situation we're in is that there is a need to stake the moral high ground in this moment, right? And Scott Adams, who is the creator of the Dilbert comic, he always used to say that, the most powerful persuasion tool people can have is to have the moral high ground. And the left, in trying to replace Christianity in its zeal for victims, has been actively trying to take the moral high ground in everything in our institutions. And because our culture is haunted by the cross more than anything else in the world, the left's narrative about history is more appealing by default. If you have two options of coercion and control that the society seems to be drawn to, and one option is more Jesus imitating in terms of its external appearance, which one do you think is going to be more effective in terms of being accepted by a Christ-haunted society 2,000 years after he arrived in history. So it's no surprise that we're in the situation we're in, where the right keeps saying, man, they've got all the institutions. Let's take them back and ban their stuff. It's like, come on. Still just speaking in such a loser's framework that doesn't understand what's happening here. You got to come to a better playbook. And every time I talk to those types of folks about, hey, why don't you imitate Jesus? They tell me, oh, no, I'd rather imitate Constantine. And I say, okay. You go do that and keep doing that and see what happens. Okay, trying to imitate that's like imitating a complete. Why would you imitate someone like that compared to the master of history? Think about that. My goodness. That's like someone saying, hey, why don't you go study under Michael Jordan how to be a basketball player? And you're like, no, I think I'd rather this person who's got no basketball training or anything. I think he'd be a better person to teach me. It's like, this is insanity, what people say on the right. They want Christianity to be some kind of ideological tool that they use to force their way back into power. And it's like, that's not at all what the point of the cross is. When the Bible talks about all the kings of the earth being arrayed against Jesus when he took his throne on the cross, it's not talking about, oh yeah, except for, anybody who's like Constantine who's doing, that's like, that was not the point at all. That was absolutely not the point at all. And as long as folks who say they're Christians don't want to learn that lesson, they won't understand how to get out of the mess that they're in. They don't want to deal with the question about what does it mean that the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. They don't want to even think about it. They don't want to think about why Jesus said stuff like that. Oh, he's still going to use violence and force. Okay, that's exactly what the stone the builders rejected means, to use violence and force. That does not mean that. That's the problem in our time today. And it's tough for people like me, because I want to work with people in the conservative community, because a lot of people in the mainstream left don't want to talk to anybody but people who want authoritarianism only. At least on the right, they have authoritarian desires, but they also have some openings for civil liberties because they don't have power, so they're open to those kind of thoughts right now. Since the left is drunk on power, even though their institutions are crumbling in legitimacy at a rapid rate, they don't want to have any room for civil liberty talks because they just want to grab a hold and stranglehold their power they've got. The right's more open to civil liberty conversations right now because they got nothing. They have nothing, and they want something. And so they're talking about how they're being abused by all this tyrannical clampdown on talk and speech and all this stuff. So that's where we're at. But it's a frustrating thing because it doesn't have to be this stupid. It doesn't have to be this stuck in the same mess over and over again, because Christians don't want to pay attention to what this means. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. They don't want to understand that. And I know it's a little bit esoteric when I say it like this, but I've explained it many times. So folks tuning in for the first time may have some context they need to look into. But this is something that is capturing the heart and soul of our times today. And we have to get a proper understanding of what Jesus accomplished in history. And why is it that cultures that continue to persist in using collective violence to subdue their opponents will continually crumble into continual sectarian division and schism and breaking apart into more and more splinter groups? That's predicted in the Gospels. That stone that the builders rejected will break apart, will crumble and fall upon and tear to pieces those who don't reckon with it and understand what it means, which is to reject violence, reject use of coercion, to reject sacrifice, and to desire mercy. That's the story. What's so hard about mercy? What's so hard about listening to the master of history instead of bringing up these tiny little cheap imitations in history? Go to the real source. I'm David Gornosky. We'll be back in a moment for hour 2, but for now, Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. A renewed push to get Americans vaccinated as the highly contagious Delta variant spreads and cases rise in the U.S. President Biden today says all the progress Americans have made in the past 6 months is on the line.
Actually, all are from unvaccinated people. And that means the safest thing to do is to get vaccinated.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and the president don't agree on much, but today McConnell also called on everybody to get the shot.
It never occurred to me after 3 highly effective vaccines were developed in under a year that we'd have difficulty getting Americans to take the shots.
A billionaire real estate investor and friend of former President Trump now charged with acting as agents of a foreign government.
Tom Barrack has been friends with Donald Trump since the 1980s. He ran the campaign that raised more than $100 million for Trump's inauguration. But back around 2016, federal prosecutors in Brooklyn now say Barrack was using his influence with the new president on behalf of the United Arab Emirates. Federal law requires foreign lobbyists to register their activities, which prosecutors say Barrack never did. He's also charged with obstruction of justice for allegedly lying about it to the FBI. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
A spokesperson for Barrack said he will be pleading not guilty. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos blasting off this morning from West Texas with 3 other crew members on board his Blue Origin rocket. The fully automated capsule launching to the edge of space for just a moment, then returning with a parachute landing. Bezos calling at the beginning for tourists and businesses.
We need to be building reusable, operable space vehicles so that we can one day, and this will be decades from now, move all heavy industry and polluting industry off into space so that we can protect this planet.
You're listening to ABC News.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. The IRS just rolled out a new program to help struggling taxpayers more easily resolve their tax problems. It's called the Taxpayer Relief Initiative, and it opens up powerful new options for people looking to get back on the right track with the IRS. And no one knows this program like the professionals at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution company. They've resolved over $1 billion in tax debt for their clients and have the expertise and experience to help you. One easy call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries of wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Make today the beginning of your fresh start with the IRS. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief now for your free confidential consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Wildfires burning in at least 13 states out west, and roughly 80 of them are still uncontained. Forecasters say a major drought is causing those fires.
At least 2,000 homes have been evacuated in Lake County, and another 5,000 are threatened. Near Lake Tahoe, the Tamarack fire is forcing more evacuations as it spreads to more than 39,000 acres and zero containment.
ABC News chief meteorologist Ginger Z. At least 200 people have died from severe flooding in parts of Western Europe. ABC's Maggie Rulli is in Germany.
Days later, we are still seeing people caked in mud, just picking through piles of their ruined belongings. It is heartbreaking. People here are calling it an absolute nightmare. And now there are questions of if this could have been avoided in the first place. Just today, the National Weather Service here announcing that 2 days prior to these floods, they announced that there were going to be disproportionate heavy rains in the area. Yet everyone we speak to says they received no warning.
Extreme flooding also inundating central China following unusually heavy rain. At least one person has died. Some neighborhoods are now covered in water at least 3 feet deep. Iran is taking to social media as a way to stave off a fall in fertility rates while the country restricts contact between unrelated men and women. Officials launched a state-approved matchmaking app to promote marriages. This is ABC News.
On our first date, we had masks on and kept 6 feet apart. Now, we're a lot closer.
Just like Cliff and Deb, thousands of singles over 50 found their perfect match on Silver Singles last year.
I feel like I'm 20 years old again, and I'm pretty sure she feels the same way.
Rediscover the magic of dating with Silver Singles, the exclusive community for singles over 50. Sign up today and receive daily matches you won't want to miss at silversingles.com/radio. silversingles.com/radio.
I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Hey, all you high school students and recent grads. How would you like to be a part of the largest digital yearbook ever? All you have to do is head to xqyearbook.com and upload your photo and a quote. And get this, for every valid submission, XQ Institute will be donating $2 in support of student mental health. This is your photo, your story, and your impact. Visit xqyearbook.com and leave your mark. We can't wait to see your submissions.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be live with you again for another hour of news and commentary coming to you live. It's always great being with you and friends in our community. You can go to our website, aneighborschoice.com, to join the community. Just give us your email, and we'll keep you company and updated with all of our content as it comes out. It's a great place to stay in touch with all of our content. And it's one of those things that I think is going to become a hub for more and more discussion. You know, as we work to, do a kind of website that people want to make a regular part of their internet experience for their daily browsing, time, with all kinds of editorials that are already on there from our team of writers and different folks that contribute. You want to go to aneighborschoice.com to see all that. And appreciate your emails as well. We got one coming just now. Great show. Keep it up. Really like the perspective you take on things. Thank you. So that's the thing that we have to deal with, is that, when you see people want to divide us, we got to go that much stronger towards unity. We can't let people divide us into hate silos. That's what it is. It's hate silos that people want us to be in. Pick a silo of hate. Speaking of that, you see, someone shared this video from this Dr. Jennifer Harvey called Denver Talks or something, and she's saying that we shouldn't worry too much about making white kids feel bad. That's literally a quote, because white kids already, quote, get so much false messages about their goodness. And, they have this religion. She says that she wants to get her 3-year-old or 4-year-old through the stage of white guilt fast, rather than waiting for later in life to get it. See, that mimics, again, they're just an imitation of Christianity, right? Because they're saying that basically, she's saying that this professor is saying that white guilt is a period of time where the scales fall off of your eyes and you're able to see the world through the conspiratorial lens of the woke, decadent, rich, six-figure professors that they've put together over the years with a lot of powerful foundations, giving them nice, cush careers. So they've created this conspiracy theory to give them a sense of purpose, and they try to get young people to buy into it, and the corporations love it. That's why they got on board with it as soon as they possibly could. And it's just this way of trying to say, hey, we can so you go through this white guilt stage is something they don't want you to stay in. That's the experience when you realize that you're sinful and you need, McWoke Jesus in your heart. But McWoke Jesus, their McWoke Jesus has nothing to do with forgiveness, has nothing to do with mercy and grace. It has everything to do with electing people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that are literally keeping people in cages. How long after since they've been elected and they've done absolutely nothing? They just keep piling people in cages for nonviolent crimes. That's an insanely delusional ideology. But in their warped calculus, it's okay that they voted for a mass incarcerator like Joe Biden and someone who's been occupying countries and blowing them up all over the world. It's okay that they did that because he uses the rhetoric they do. So therefore, he's part of the cause. That's why I call the leftism stuff a Gnostic religion, because it's more concerned with words and language than they are with reality. As long as Biden mouths the language they mouth by saying he's going to promote sensitivity training with McWoke, six-figure and millionaire professors and so forth, that's cool for them because that advances their religion. It makes it more mainstream and powerful. They don't care if he's literally sitting and doing nothing to give clemency and pardon to people who are languishing in prison of all backgrounds and races. In fact, that leads me to this story in the New York Times. It says Biden legal team decides inmates must return to prison after COVID emergency. The Biden administration legal team has decided that thousands of federal convicts who were released to home confinement to reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19 will be required by law to return to prison a month after the official state of emergency for the pandemic ends, officials said on Monday. The administration has come under pressure from criminal justice reform activists and some lawmakers to revoke a Trump-era memo by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, which said inmates whose sentences lasted beyond the pandemic emergency period would have to go back to prison. That memo was written by Bill Barr, who, has had a scoundrel-type record of throwing away the key to anybody who has, run afoul of the prison industrial complex, money-making machine of victimless crime laws. And so Biden's just on the same party as Bill Barr. That's why they're all on the same team. But the Biden legal team has concluded that the memo correctly interpreted the law, which applies to about 4,000 nonviolent inmates, according to officials who spoke on condition of anonymity about sensitive internal deliberations. Several officials characterized the decision as an assessment of the best interpretation of the law, not a matter of policy preference. The official state of emergency is not expected to end this year because of a rise in new infections caused by the coronavirus's Delta variant, but the determination means that whenever it does end, the department's hands will be tied. That leaves two options if those prisoners are not to be sent back into cells. Either Congress could enact a law to expand the Justice Department's authority to keep them at home beyond the emergency, or President Biden could use his clemency powers to commute their sentences to home confinement. The Biden team is said to be wary of a blanket mass commutation, however, both because it would represent an extraordinary intervention into the normal functioning of the judicial system and it could create political risks if any recipient who would otherwise be locked up commits a serious crime. Another option is case-by-case assessment for commutations, but the volume of work required is to individually evaluate so many people is daunting. But trust me, they work very hard to make sure their corporate cronies in Big Pharma are taken care of, don't they? You see, millions of people, they watch Netflix specials that talk about right-wingers or monsters and they're perfect. They read New York Times, they listen to NPR broadcasts that say the same stupid fairy tale every day, and they pat themselves on the back as they just supported a man who did exactly what we told you he would do. Do nothing. And he'll do something if a lot of pressure gets out there, but it will be in spite of his administration's preferences. It will be in spite of the fawning garbage media that fawns and covers for him and gives him no scrutiny. That's the only reason why he'll lift a finger to do anything. And it will be the minimal effort he can possibly do to placate his base or whoever raises the ire about this. But you see how pathetic? This is the grandeur of McWokeism, telling white kids in elementary school that they should feel bad, but then they feel perfectly righteous in voting for Biden, who's going to keep people of all races, nonviolent people, languishing and sending them back into prison, apparently, rather than just doing the bold thing of giving nonviolent people their freedom totally and fully. Oh, it's too much work, they say. Of course it's too much work. There's no special interest money behind it. They go where the money is. Biden, Kamala Harris, the McWoke crowd, they go where all their big corporate buddies want them to go. Big subsidies for plant goop, seed oil sludge burgers, perpetual war, handouts for scam, fake green energy scam companies. That's what they put all their priority into. And their priority, of course, is to expand prisons. And they don't care. They'll say stuff like, oh, I don't want private prisons, but they'll do whatever they can to expand prisons in whatever way possible. That's their priority. Their priority is not to lift a finger for people who are languishing. How about Rufus Rochelle? He's come on the show many times. There are people who would want to cancel my show for good, to silence voices like him. Someone who's been left behind by the Trump administration, and the Biden administration would do nothing to help bring him his freedom that he deserved. He should have never spent 32, 33 years locked up for ghost drugs, a nonviolent thing. There was no real basis for it. He had no violent crime. He did nothing. He had no injured party. You think about what they accused him of selling is just a drop in the bucket about what the CIA is known to be selling in cocaine over the years. Go watch the movie Kill the Messenger to find out that story. But this is the sad, sorry state of affairs of this Gnostic leftist religion that's more concerned about attacking, cereal names, and you got to have Kellogg's write down your pronoun. That's what they care about. They don't care about flesh and blood people languishing in prison by the guy that they put in there. Trump was actually issuing clemencies, and he did it early on. Someone who's a good little company man like Biden, who doesn't rock the boat for the establishment, they typically will only issue clemencies near the very end of their term. But Trump was issuing them. He didn't issue nearly enough. I am not an apologist for Trump. I am someone who's an actual analyst who's actually looking at the facts with principles. And that's why people on the left and the corporate establishment, they're scared to death of shows like mine taking off. That's why they've spent so much time trying to censor my show, even in its infancy online. They want to try to choke it out before it catches on because they can't handle people that outflank their concern for victims. That just totally destroys their whole left versus right paradigm. And so that's why they can't stand these kind of refreshing, positive conversations where we prioritize the victims. We'll have Amy Pova of the Can Do Clemency Foundation. We've had her on many, many times over the years, last 3 years on radio and so forth. And we'll have her on again with some of the folks who are being left behind and brutalized by Biden because they can't lift a finger and give people their total freedom. I mean, think about how cowardly and pathetic Biden is. This is a guy who made how much money raising off of the death of George Floyd, and he can't lift a finger for people in situations they don't need to be in, still stuck in home confinement, and they can't do a finger to say, hey, just let them go, get their freedom back. They're nonviolent. They didn't have any victims in their police report history. Leave them alone. But he wants to tell you about systemic oppression. He doesn't know anything about it. This guy is the author of systemic oppression, literally. And I'm not saying that like for all of humanity. I'm saying for the actual laws that are the real driver to a lot of the systemic oppression that people talk about, these guys are the authors of it. And McWoke religion says, that's okay, David. David, you put on people who actually are in prison and you get them their voice out there and we publish their articles asking for clemency, but we don't care because that's flesh and blood real victims. We're Gnostic victimists. We're Gnostic McWoke religionists. So we're TV people. We only care about stories. We don't care about reality. We don't care about flesh and blood results. That's the battle between Christianity and this Gnostic victimism. See, it's all about, well, it doesn't matter, David. Biden is our guy. He gives our crony capitalist money, not the Republican crony capitalists. He gives our, Wall Street friends money, not the Republican friends on Wall Street. He gives our team power, right? He incarcerates our people that we hate. So we don't care if he's leaving behind people like Rufus Rochelle that you have on your show all the time. It doesn't matter to us, because for Gnostic religionists on the left, it's all about the experience in the mind, in the rhetoric and the words. They don't care about physical reality here. They don't care. Now, some on the noble left, the Glenn Greenwalds, they would care. I could talk to him all day and he'd be totally on board with probably what I'm talking about. I don't even know his position on this. I know he would he's a normal, he has a conscience, right? He's not part of a Borg. I saw somebody early in the comments said, we've got some great comments we'll try to get to. I saw someone earlier say, I don't know if the left is religion. It's more like a cult. But a cult is simply a cult is a smaller religion that has not gotten mainstream acceptance. So I think it is more accurate to call the left a religion because it has all institutional mainstream acceptance. It's just a religion that's quickly losing its luster in the minds of people who are tired of its preachy hypocrisy, right? And this is exactly a perfect example of their preachy, ridiculous hypocrisy, that they will censor shows like me and my program when we bring on real victims with nonviolent crime sentences, life sentences, and they will try to diminish our ability to reach audiences on their little controlled fake platforms like YouTube and Facebook. But then they will amplify the voice of someone like Biden, who does nothing to help real victims get home. That's the hypocrisy of the left. It's a Gnostic religion. They care more about words because Biden says the science, because Biden says we need to have a concern and a conversation about white supremacy, because he uses that language. That language is sacrificial, accusatory language, because he yells and screams at the right people. Therefore, he can keep people in cages for victimless crime laws. That's the pathetic reality of the Gnostic religion on the left. And nobody is talking about it. But we're talking about it, and that's why this message is going to spread faster than we can even imagine, because it's an idea whose time has come. Back in a moment with more.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Welcome back to the program. We're live on radio. Terminal Insanity commenter on our YouTube stream says, we need to abandon the concept of right and left. I am on Team Freedom. Choose for yourself. Be a socialist, a communist, or a capitalist, or whatever you please. Just don't rob others of their choices. I think the best way to end socialism in America is to require all the socialists to become socialists and just them. That reminds me of an article I wrote years ago, back when Michael Moore had the movie. Man, what a quaint time when everything was so much more superficial. You could just talk about stuff like this. Seems so innocent by comparison. And the sad thing is that was post 9/11, which, robbed this country of a lot of innocence in our culture. And even then, that feels 2008 or 9 when Michael Moore's movie Capitalism, A Love Story came out. I think that was the year it came out. But that, that feels like a quiet little innocent time compared to where the mainstream media discourse has dragged us into as they kick and flail to have more power for their cronies in D.C. But it reminds me, I wrote an article called The No More Capitalism Challenge, where I asked Michael Moore to put his money where his mouth is and to redistribute the profits of his films equally among everybody who is in the production of the film, including the janitor who takes care of the offices when he's done doing his editing and having his office lunch parties and so forth for making his films. Why does he feel that he gets to have millions of dollars, but the guy who's in charge of editing, the guy who's the assistant camera person, the different folks involved, the different components of their production, that they don't get to have equal portion of the wage, so he could practice what he preaches and show us by making sure that everybody gets an equal amount of the production of these films that he's made. But he didn't take up that offer. Nobody wants to take up the offer of that classical leftism. But what's more attractive is the McWoke stuff, because you don't have to really do anything tangible. It's very Gnostic. Again, all you have to do is just mouth rhetoric that sounds a certain way and demonize certain groups of people that other people hate, and then you get to feel better about yourself and nothing changes. That's why, all these giant companies, MLB and Coca-Cola and all these groups have really latched onto this, banks and so forth. But meanwhile, the thing that they're actually imitating, the movement in history that Jesus inaugurated, continues to have growth all over the world. A commenter named Sachin Jose or something, I don't know how this one's pronounced, but he says Christianity's growth is astonishing in Iran. According to Iran's Mohabbat TV, around 3,000 Muslims convert to Christianity every month. So that's the good news, is that the real deal that McWoke corporate leftism is imitating continues to spread in the hearts and minds of people all over the world. China, their church continues to grow. Iran has a reformation. And if one would just imitate Jesus instead of doing churchianity and all this silly stuff that gets in the way, we could have a renaissance in our own country. And we could get back to the business of healing our culture and healing people and healing bodies broken from illness. Up next, we'll hear from a scientist who worked at the Health and Human Services from the last administration. Back in a moment.
Weekdays, 9 to noon.
Joe Biden's catastrophic, corrupt, it's not even a mishandling of the border.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
And we're going to invite the cartels and the human traffickers and the child sex traffickers and the smugglers and the coyotes and the fentanyl traffickers and the heroin traffickers.
Chris Plant.
We're going to invite them into our country, and if you don't like it, you're a racist.
Chris Plant. Weekdays, 9 to noon. News Talk 1040. WHBO.
This progress report on his 6 months in office, President Biden.
Overall, COVID-19 deaths are down dramatically, and these last 6 months, about 90% down due to our vaccination program.
CDC says the Delta variant now makes up 83% of COVID cases in the U.S. That's a big jump in just days. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
What we're seeing in Chicago is in excess of 95% of the people hospitalized, and over 95% of the current deaths are also among people who are unvaccinated.
Another major rebound, Wall Street, after yesterday's sharp drop. The major indexes gaining back almost all they lost. Arrested the chair of President Trump's 2017 inaugural committee, Tom Barrack, for allegedly conspiring to influence foreign policy positions to benefit the United Arab Emirates and not registering as a foreign agent. Chuck Severson, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, David Gronowski. And, we had this exchange with Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci that happened today in Congress. And I mentioned it earlier, and I wanted to set this up because we've got to talk about this and some of the things that are involved in this. This is an important story. And it's a contrast between people who I think who are committed more to facts and those who are committed to the form and fashion of looking like science with authority actually as their main priority. So let's go ahead and roll that clip of Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci's exchange. We'll try to play as much as we can of this because I think it's illustrative of kind of the dynamic that continues to divide this country, where people who are on Dr. Fauci's team, even you look at these facts, you got to say, wait a second, Dr. Rand Paul has a point here, but because he's on team villain, according to 90% of the media class that shape their narratives of low information people, he's automatically, whatever he says, they have to hate. And they violently hate him because they're always cheering on violence and aggression towards Rand Paul. He even had, a terrible death threat the other day, and they just yawn at it. If that happened to Dr. Fauci, they'd make that, again, another, 9/11-like moment where everybody is supposed to be, on lockdown just because of that. But if it happens to Rand Paul, who is a serious person raising real questions, they dehumanize their opponents that are not on the right narrative. So let's go ahead and roll some of this clip. Let's see if we have this clip here with Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci from earlier today. Let's see if we have it here. I don't know what we're waiting on here, but I'll pull some of the quotes here from zerohedge.com. They were talking about it. It says, to borrow a phrase popularized by millennials, Senator Rand Paul has found the receipts, apparently, proving that Dr. Fauci lied about the National Institute Health financing gain-of-function research for bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Rand Paul says, yes, Dr. Fauci's NIH did fund the Wuhan Virology Lab. Here's the verbatim admission.
Discovery of a rich gene pool of bat SARS-related coronaviruses. Please deliver a copy of the journal article to Dr. Fauci. In this paper, Dr. Shi credits the NIH and lists the actual number of the grant that she was given by the NIH. In this paper, she took 2 bat coronavirus genes, spike genes, and combined them with a SARS-related backbone to create new viruses that are not found in nature. These lab-created viruses were then shown to replicate in humans. These experiments combine genetic information from different coronaviruses that infect animals but not humans to create novel artificial viruses able to infect human cells. Viruses that in nature only infect animals were manipulated in the Wuhan lab to gain the function of infecting humans. This research fits the definition of the research that the NIH said was subject to the pause in 2014 to 2017, a pause in funding on gain of function. But the NIH failed to recognize this, defines it away, and it never came under any scrutiny. Dr. Richard E. Bright, a molecular biologist from Rutgers, described this research in Wuhan as the Wuhan lab used NIH funding to construct novel chimeric SARS-related coronaviruses able to infect human cells and laboratory animals. This is high-risk research that creates new potential pandemic pathogens that exist only in the lab, not in nature. This research matches, these are Dr. E. Bright's words, this research matches, indeed epitomizes, the definition of gain-of-function research done entirely in Wuhan, for which there was supposed to be a federal pause. Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress.
Microphone.
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you're referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among animals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's send Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2, that's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
No
is
one is alleging that
molecularly.
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you
not-
can't get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
They're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
admit the truth.
And you
Senator
implying,
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
and you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent
could
that.
have
And
been.
if anybody
It could
is
have been.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
Senator Smith.
So that was, if you saw the video, some of my commenters are saying in our video stream, the clip that Twitter is circulating doesn't show any of Rand Paul's very important points. It just shows their high priest responding, and they say, "Oh, he got him. Look, he could just go. He could babble, and they would say he got him. They are devoted to this religion. It's crumbling faster than they could possibly imagine, and they don't know how to keep up with the house of lies. These folks in the TV party, they buy into every stupid lie that they tell them. They tell them WMDs, they believe it. They tell them your house prices will always go up. Keep buying homes you can't afford. They buy it. They believe it. They get in trouble. They say, hey, Russia owns Trump. We'll find out all the facts with Mueller. Nothing comes out. They just keep investing in lie after lie after lie. The TV said, no, it's not a lab leak. It didn't come out there. Oh, it is. Sorry, lied again. And they just keep going for it. They're in Stockholm syndrome. They're totally in love with their captors, But meanwhile, the facts remain that Rand Paul exposed this guy as a fake. Because the guy, Fauci, kept saying, well, you're saying that those types of gain-of-function virus research that are listed as the things that the NIH funded with that grant, you're saying that's what COVID is? That is preposterous. It's molecularly impossible. That's not what Rand Paul was saying. All he's establishing is the fact that there is a history there in that time period where the NIH under Dr. Fauci was giving money to EcoHealth Alliance, and apparently Google was funding this too, that's come out in the news, to this lab to do this type of research at a dentist level security, had low security level standards. It was reckless. So he's not saying that the types of the specific viruses that are mentioned in the actual research papers in question there is the same thing as the COVID thing. He's not saying that. But Fauci is a sophist, and he's dealing with low info people who believe that, folks like Jimmy Kimmel are reliable sources of news, you see? So he's dealing with a low info group. He doesn't have to say anything, but he's visibly shaking. He's shaking. He's scared and he's angry because Rand Paul's touching on the heart of this story, which is incredibly important to help people. Hopefully, if this story can ever come out fully and the facts revealed, hopefully, maybe, just maybe, it will peel away a few more million people who are still believing in the, the myth of the scientist, priestly casts of DC, that they're somehow impeccably the monopoly of science. Maybe they'll finally start to see, wait a second, they made the biggest blunder that caused this entire disaster in the first place. As Rand Paul said, 4 million people died. He's not saying in this particular question, he's not saying that the particular research that's being referenced was the specific virus that was COVID-19. Or that led to the COVID-19 pandemic. He's saying that they were doing that type of research in that lab with his funding, and it needs to be investigated as to whether that same lab continued that kind of research, which led to the particular virus that we're dealing with to this day. That is a fair and important and science-driven question, but the McWoke, McScience, fake TV party crowd, they can't handle it. So all they do is call for violence against Rand Paul. It's very pathetic and just absolutely imbecilic to see this kind of crap happen. They'll just double down. How long will they double down? Tyler Cardon on Twitter, I guess he's at Blaze Media, he says Fauci sent Hugh Auchincloss the same paper Rand Paul referenced at the hearing today via email on February 1st, 2020. The name of the attachment was Barrick Shih et al. Nature Medicine SARS gain of function.pdf. Okay? So that was sent February 1st, 2020 from Fauci to Hugh Auchincloss, where the title, the story is called SARS gain of function.pdf, looking at the research they were doing at this Wuhan lab. And then Auchincloss's reply a few hours later, Tyler says, is also telling. Quote, the paper you sent me says the experiments were performed before the gain of function pause, but have since been reviewed and approved by NIH. Okay? And then he goes on to say, neither Fauci nor Auchincloss seem concerned that the experiments with the chimeric SH014 recombinant viruses had been wrongly classified as gain of function in the paper, and no corrections to the acknowledgement sections were ever made. And then the acknowledgement section, they're acknowledging the NIH grant. A correndum was issued, however, on November 20th, 2015, stating that the authors had failed to acknowledge a funding source, U.S. aid EPT predict funding from EcoHealth to ZLS. And who might ZLS be? Zhengli Shi of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, of course. So Tyler Cardon says Fauci is lying his blank off because he knows Rand Paul has him dead to rights. Fauci absolutely lied to Congress by claiming that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain of function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And so the point of this is that they are totally lying and that they were totally reckless to fund this type of research at a low-level security lab, and then this type of virus emerges along that line of research. Is it the specific one? Is it the specific virus that's listed in this actual paper? Or is it something along the same lines happening at that same dentist-level security lab in Wuhan? That's what the public needs to know. That's what the whole world needs to know. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we'll continue to keep on this story as we continue on A Neighbor's Choice. Back in just a moment with more Live.
Hello, this is David Granoski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents. The law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney, spokeswoman.
Looking at the comments we have live on a Neighbor's Choice video stream, we see the crowd is manipulated by evolutionary biologists said. Qualified virologists said. This is what Fauci will continue to fall back on to obscure the terms. Yes, he's using appeal to authority, and that word evolutionary biologist means a lot. Of course, another evolutionary biologist who's also a Democrat with a lot of credentials to his name, Dr. Brett Weinstein, has spoken out against the way they've handled this, this drug rollout that they want everybody to take. And he's raised concerns about the therapeutics that are generics that don't have obscene profit margin patents, that they've been totally censored and attacked by it's such a scam. Google was funding, this EcoHealth Alliance stuff in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And so they have a dog in this fight. And so it's no wonder that they don't want people using alternative therapeutics, because then that whole thing falls apart, makes a lot of people look bad. The emergency use authorization that's required to shove this product into everybody, including babies now. That's the new push. They want kids, all these little babies, to put their skin in the game, while the corporations don't get to put their skin in the game. They get all the profits and upside, and your child and your baby is supposed to carry any risk. It's totally shameful. It's totally repudiated. Do not back down 1 inch. You do not put kids up for lab experimentation. They don't have any right to do that. You don't feel intimidated by these bullies. They don't even know anything about what they're talking about. They use this language like, oh, evolutionary biologists say, but then we've got other evolutionary biologists that say the exact opposite, and they get deleted off of YouTube for raising legitimate scientific papers that dispute their little political narrative. So it's a total disaster on their part. They've totally discredited themselves. And it's going to take generations, if they ever can get their credibility back. So many people who used to just blindly trust everything that came out of D.C. I'm talking about independents. I'm talking about those in the right. I'm talking about those who are the smart, intelligent, progressive left. This has shredded the authorities of these public health officials completely. And I don't think it would ever recover. Because you got Fauci over there shaking like a salt dispenser, just shaking viciously in anger and fear. Because Rand Paul's got the receipts, as they said in that story. And the chickens are coming home to roost. Unfortunately, millions of people are still suffering because the media and these giant social media cartels circle the wagons and do everything they can to hold and to protect the powerful from accountability. It's not about Fauci as a person. It's about the entire bureaucracy and hubristic arrogance of his field. that doesn't want to deal with the facts of what they were doing to fund recklessly this lab with low-level security that should have never happened. Luca comments, they aren't willing to let go of their idols like Fauci because he is science truth dispenser. And again, a lot of that love of science, again, that's more of a right-wing thing in the traditional sense. But the liberal left has really taken it on, I think, again, because they want to supplant Christianity as the place of science and intelligence. And a lot of this happened around the time of the battle between evolution and, young earth creation perspectives, right? That's where a lot of this happened, where people said, you know what? I will prove I'm intelligent and I'm sophisticated and I'm the top of the social status hierarchy by going along with whatever the media says is science, or whatever government says is science, because science equals evolution and evolution equals I don't have to let God be the boss of me. That's the way a lot of people take that. And I don't think you have to take it that way, but that's how millions of people in the mainstream liberal community process that. And then when you bring up their own field of researchers, again, like evolutionary biologist Brett Weinstein, who raises challenges to the vaccine rollout and the censorship of therapeutics that are generic, they can't handle it. So they just delete and put their hands in their ears. So they don't really have any principles that tie them down to reality with a lot of this stuff. They just go with ad hoc as they go. And I really appreciate all the comments we've had today on the show today. And I'm, trying to get to some of them today. It is not limited to science. Much of the information we receive is distorted. Science is just in the spotlight now with COVID. That's Magic Marker. Joseph says, we are dealing with American Marxism. Mark Levin has it right. Another, the answer to Marxism, socialism, is secession and decentralization. Think local, act local. Fred says, greetings from France. How's it going in France, Fred? I see there's a lot of protest about their terrible corporatist passport. Pretty pathetic what they're doing over there. Hope they can fight that off without having to, have it too ugly. Aaron says, if we cannot live our principles, then we have no right to demand power over others. Perhaps one day the right will understand this. Another says, does the left actually have principles? They seem to change quickly. Those who can't control themselves seek to control others. Another comment. Those in power can afford to abandon their principles. Those who are not must stand firm in their principles. And so, you continue to see these great comments you guys pour in, and I always appreciate your feedback on the show. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. If you want to contribute a question or have something read on air, just email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. Another comment says, and they exclude any scientist who disagrees with them. In fact, you're not a scientist at all if you disagree. They want us to think science is obedience to corporate spokesmen in lab coats. Very well said. That's very well said, because it's true. We that's what it's about. Obedience, blind obedience and conformity. People want the bumper sticker. They want the postcard, not the reality. That's right. Science TM comment says they want the postcard. They don't want the reality. And they want the social status. This is why I tell you, you've got to understand anthropology. Read Rene Girard, read this stuff. It's all about social status. It's all about envying whose status you want to desire to be like, who's the inside group, who's the outside group in your social status nexus. What kind of language do you have to mimic to look cool? That's what this is all about, folks. It's not that complicated. It's not. It's what human nature is all about. Human nature, in bondage to its own desires and passions and greed and envy, is a tyrannical place. It unleashes a lot of chaos because people are so arrogant and they don't want to let go of their religion. They'd rather tear down the whole world than to admit that they were wrong and that Fauci was wrong and that he was at the heart of this whole problem, most likely. They don't want to confess and realize that they've been going the wrong way. So people will go off of a cliff persisting in their ignorance. And that's a sad tragedy. But we have people to protect, my friend. We have family. There are children, young people looking up to us. We can't allow them to take those kids off the cliff with us. We have to fight for every neighbor, every human being life is sacred. That's what we're here for. I'm David Gornosky. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.